Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the July question and answer session here at Doman Learning. This is a once a month live Q&A session that we give, and parents join from around the world and ask us questions about the Doman method, early learning, early childhood education, and parenting. So wherever you are in the world, welcome. We always start these sessions off by answering pre-submitted questions from parents who have already enrolled in the Doman learning courses. So these are parents who might have enrolled in our reading before school course or our math before school course or our Doman baby course. So we'll start by answering those pre-submitted questions. And then if we've got time at the end, we will answer questions from the public. So if you got a question you're watching right now on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, post your question and hopefully we'll have time to get to it. My name is Spencer Doman. I'm a co-founder of Doman Learning. I spend my days teaching parents how to give their children exceptional abilities in the first years of life. I'm joined by my brother, Noah Doman, also a co-founder of Doman Learning, and he's the head of parent success. He's the go-to person who helps parents work through challenges. He answers their questions, helps them find the right Doman resources. So, Noah.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say that, I'm usually parents' first point of contact when it comes to Doman Learning. If you DM us on Instagram, message us on Facebook, or put in a YouTube comment, I am the first one to answer. I also answer emails at hello@domanlearning.com. And on top of that, I do a 15-minute discovery call with parents to see, what Doman Method program is right for you and your family. I'm going to put the information up for that discovery call. You can sign up. It's my favorite part of my job is talking to you directly. So please sign up if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help. So there is a QR code which you can scan, and then it'll bring you directly to scheduling. And I will also put the link in the comments as well.
Amazing. And listen, if at any point now or later you decide to enroll in any Doman Learning course, you can use the coupon code Spencer10. It's all one word, Spencer10, all caps, to get 10% off any course at checkout. So anything at domanlearning.com.
I'm putting up the banner right now.
Thanks, Noah. All right. Well, I guess we can jump right into questions. Is that right, Noah? You want to?
Yeah. Let's get into it. Our first question, this is from Manpreet. She has a 7-year-old son with ASD and ADHD. My son is having trouble reading and visual tracking. When I give him a choice between two words, he seems to only look at the first letter. If both words start with the same letter, he guesses, but if they start with different letters, he gets it right. How can I improve his reading, and would doing a crawling program help with it?
Very good questions. So sometimes this will happen with children, especially children who are above 3 years of age when they start with the Doman method. And the reason why is at around 3 years, even average children will start to recognize letters. So they'll get to know their ABCs. And so sometimes when you start the Doman method a little later with children, kids are very bright, they will sometimes focus on the first letter of a word. So for example, if you show them the word cat and dog and you say, where's the word dog? They might know D is for dog and C is for cat. And so they focus on that first letter. So what you have to do with children, at this point, Manpreet, is I actually recommend showing categories of words where all the words start with the same letter. So imagine a category of words where the words are like car, cat, call, cab. And what we see when we do that with children is children like your son, who's 7 years old, they have to be a bit challenged to see the differences in the words that start with the same letter. And very often when I do this, I find within days, the children will start to look at the entire word and recognize entire words. And often parents will see a really nice progress where they'll start to do this with other categories. Maybe they'll have a category later on with all letters that start with B and then all words that start with S. And after a while, they don't even need to do that anymore. Those children just start to see the whole word. So that's my first recommendation for you, Manpreet. By the way, I go into a lot of depth into this topic and other topics in a course that a lot of parents miss at Doman Learning, which is called the Doman Books course. So in the Doman Books course, I talk about how to take children from really recognizing words to reading books. And I talk about some of the pitfalls that certain children have, including this one, and certain, things parents can introduce to help children learn how to read books independently. So I do recommend the Doman Books course for parents who are in that position after they've done the reading before school course. And then, Manpreet, to answer your question, yes, crawling and creeping could absolutely help for children with neurodevelopmental delays. That is one of the techniques that is used by our sister organization, Doman International, to organize the brain. I would recommend reading the book, in your case, Answering Autism, which is a great resource for parents with children with that diagnosis. I'd also recommend going to domaninternational.org and reaching out to Doman International to learn more about those programs for children with special needs.
Great. Okay, moving on. This is from Sheena. She has a 7-month-old baby and just enrolled in both the math and reading programs. Her question is, are there any disadvantages to starting both programs at the same time, or is it better to start one first and wait a few weeks before introducing the second?
Yeah, it's the latter. It's best to start one course before introducing the second. There's no disadvantage from your child's standpoint. Your child would love to start both a reading and a math program right now. But from your standpoint, you really want to make sure that you're able to do the first program consistently before you add in the second program. And we're going to be hearing some questions from other parents later on who talk about, challenges around organization of the program. So best to start with one program, figure it out for yourself, what works for you, and then start the second program. Based on my experience, I would recommend you start with the reading program first. It tends to be a favorite amongst kids. So I would start there first and then layer in math afterwards.
Now, just as a prerequisite for Sheena's second question, when we teach reading, we've now added images to all of our reading words, our single words. And so how we do it is we teach the image first, and then we teach the reading word. Okay, yeah, Spencer has some examples, right? Exactly like that. And so her question is, and I've been seeing this too, is also regarding the reading program. I've noticed some parents on Instagram flash the single word card before showing the picture. Is there any benefit to doing it this way, or do you advise always showing the picture before the word?
Yeah, I always recommend showing the picture before the word. And I don't see any benefit to doing it the other way around. And the reason why we show the picture first is first we want to know the child. We want the child to know what it is we're teaching. So in this case, we're showing them the picture of the color orange. And we're saying orange. So the child now understands what orange is. And then we show them the word and we're saying orange again. So they can now connect the word, which is really an abstract shape, right, to something which is clear, right? And, not at all ambiguous. So yeah, we always do picture first and then second word. And so usually when I see videos of parents doing that, usually those are parents who are often kind of learning from a kind of pirated Doman method, because there are kind of pirated versions of our program that do that and make other common mistakes. Or sometimes it's just people who get confused, And listen, parents have sometimes reached out to us and said, I got it wrong and I did the word before the picture. And we say, okay, how is it going? And they're like, oh, my kid's reading. Okay, fine. Then I guess it doesn't really matter. So I'm not saying for every child it makes a huge difference, but for some kids, it makes a really, really big difference.
Moving on, this is from India. She is working with her 14-month-old niece who goes to daycare 5 days a week. Her question is, can I realistically expect my niece to learn to read if we can only do 3 sets of cards 3 times a day instead of the full 5 sets? Does it still make sense to do the program at this lower frequency? And if so, should I adjust how many weeks we work on each set of cards?
Great question. So first of all, quick answer, it's absolutely worth it to do the program even if it's at a reduced frequency. Doing 3 categories out of 5 is not only perfectly reasonable, it's actually the more common recommendation I give now to parents who are just starting out on the program. I know in the reading before school course, we said 5 categories, and the diehards can do that, but 3 categories works really, really well, and it gets great results. And I would say to India, first of all, I think it's beautiful that you're doing this with your niece as a proud uncle. I think it's amazing to make that kind of difference in your nephew or niece's life. So congratulations. And I would argue that even picking up one category once makes a difference, because what you're doing, besides giving your child or your niece or nephew the gift of knowledge, you're also teaching them that learning is fun, that you love learning, right? There's nothing that a child wants more than the undistracted attention of an adult who loves them, right? For children, that is the most important thing to them. So when you show up and you say, hey, let's have some fun with some cards, your nephew or niece is going to relish that and learn a lot from that experience. So absolutely, it's worth it. And if you're able to achieve 3 categories, that's a huge success. But even if you're not, it's going to be worthwhile and you're going to see the results.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I actually spoke to India, I think about a month ago. She signed up for, our free discovery call, which I don't know which quarter it is for you, but you can scan the QR code and schedule a discovery call with me. And, I was so impressed. An aunt trying to teach her niece to read is incredible. And, I'm so happy you're using us as a tool, right? These questions, by the way, for people who are joining, are all pre-submitted by parents or aunts and uncles who have already enrolled in our programs. We answer their questions first, and then we answer public questions at the end.
Just to touch on one more thing I want to say about India's thing. So, when my first nephew was born, he lives about an hour away from my wife and I. So we don't get to see him very often, but still we love to gift him, sets of cards and show them to him when we were around him. And by the age of 2, we had shown him a set of cards of different shapes, and he would see the shapes everywhere. Like if he saw a painting on the wall, he'd say rectangle, right? And I remember once I was walking downstairs with him, and one of the stairs in the corner was a triangle shape. And he looked at the stair and he went, triangle, which was pretty exceptional. Not only that he knew a triangle, but that it was different from all the other stairs. And he pointed that out, he knew every part of a car engine, for example, from cards that we showed him. He knew if I went on walks with him, he would see cars as they drove by and go Nissan, Toyota, because we taught him the different car logos on cards. So even a little bit goes a long, long way.
No, 100%. It's really, by the way, really an incredible thing to witness.
He's working to become a commercial airline pilot right now. So, if that gives you a sense of any little bit helps.
100%. Okay, moving on to Tayer. Tayer has an 11-month-old daughter who is very physically active and loves to read. So this is Tayer's question. 5 sets of cards a day is too much for my own attention span to manage, but I can reliably do 6 total sessions a day. How should I adjust our plan?
Yeah. First of all,
so it's very similar to India's question.
Yeah. And the short answer is actually what Tayer has done helps me out greatly. Tayer has said, I can do 6 sessions a day. Right. And that means Tayer is really looking at her schedule and has a good sense of what she's capable of doing. So the answer is, you're going to show 2 categories in a day, each 3 times, right? 2 categories, each 3 times. That's going to be 6 total showings in a day. And 2 categories, similar to India's question, 2 categories a day is amazing, so get started with that. Yeah.
And just to add to that, right, once they get to the point of couplets and sentences, if they're doing 2 categories a day, would you do 1 set of single words, 1 set of sentences or couplets?
Yeah. I mean, for starting out, I would follow the schedule that's outlined in the Reading Before School course, meaning what I mean by that is the first month is just devoted to single words, right? So the first month, I would do 2 categories of single words. And then in the second month, I would do, to your point, Noah, 1 category of single words, and the second category would be couplets. So I'd still follow that monthly schedule that we outline in Reading Before School. I would just moderate the number of categories. And India had asked before, like, if she shows fewer categories, does that mean she has to alter the number of days a category is shown for? The answer is no. You're still going to show the same frequency. You're going to show 3 times a day for 5 days. That doesn't change depending on how many categories you're doing, because the child still needs to see those cards with repetition.
Well, it's funny. Tahir's next question is, sometimes when I finish showing a group of cards, my daughter seems disappointed that it's over. If I show her another group right away, she pays close attention to that one too. Is it okay to add an extra group like this? How consistent do I need to be with the number of groups per session? And do these variations significantly change our learning plan?
Yeah. So the answer is, if you show a set of 5 words, right? If we're looking at kind of old school by the book Doman method, we would say show 1 category and then you must take a 5-minute break before you show the next one, right? Because the principle of the Doman method is always stop before your child wants to stop. Never overstay your welcome. That being said, I've become more flexible over the last couple of years, especially with parents who have limited amounts of time. So in Tahir's circumstance, what I would do is I'd show 1 category. And if the child, and this is if the child says, I want more, right, shows they want more, you can say, okay, we'll do 1 more category, but that's it, right? So you're kind of, it's almost like giving a child dessert. You're allowed 1 scoop of ice cream, but that's it, and that always leaves them wanting more, because, it's like, oh, but it's not as much as I want. So yeah, so in that case, you could do 2 categories back to back. And then you could get more categories in, hypothetically, in a day. You just have to make sure you're always stopping before your child wants to stop.
Great. And just as a refresher for people who've just joined, our monthly Q&A starts with pre-submitted questions from parents who are enrolled in our courses, and then we answer public questions at the end. So this is from Sharni. She has a 13-month-old daughter. They've been trying to do word and dot cards twice in the morning and twice in the evening, but they've been having some issues. Her question is, her daughter gets very distracted and isn't paying attention to the cards. How can we reset and get our program back on track?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I was just talking to Noah about this, and my first recommendation now, whenever a parent says my child is distracted, my first piece of advice is send Doman Learning a video of your child. Because if we get to watch a video of a teaching session, sometimes within, and I mean this, a second of watching the session, we can pinpoint what the issue is. We're like, oh, you're not showing them fast enough, or you're showing too many cards in a sitting, or, the way you're showing them, the actual presentation isn't quite right. And so sometimes we can just make a quick change sometimes we could go back and forth with 10 emails and not get to that, right? So my first recommendation for Sharni and anyone, or Sharni, or any parent who is having this issue of distraction is to send a video of a teaching session to us. Now, in the Reading Before School course, we do kind of go through some of the common issues, which are showing the cards too slowly, showing more than 5 cards in a session, right? And more recently, we've added to that course the picture and word cards being taught together, which we brought up before, right? Because what we basically found is there are certain children that if we only showed word cards to, their interest would be limited. But if we went ahead and threw in a picture and we said, this is the tiger, and that's the word tiger, right? All of a sudden, now that child loved their reading program. And so it's a great way to get children engaged. So I would also say to Sharni, I don't know if Sharni is using our reading materials, but I would definitely make sure you're using the picture cards from Doman Learning along with the word cards.
And I'd like to add something else, which is, if you are doing both programs at the same time, I say this to parents a lot of time, which is let's focus on the one that your child is most interested in, right? So if you want to reset, if your kid likes math a bit more, or maybe reading a bit more, or if you don't know, whichever one you are more excited to teach, start with that one and get it down successful, get it so that it's joyous and, you're able to do it successfully, and then move on to the next subject like math.
Yeah, that's a great premise in general in life, where when things aren't going great, simplify, right? Move down to one program, let's get that going well, and then we can start adding from there.
And if you were in general, I know every situation is different, Spencer, but if, talking about this reset, right? This program reset, would you recommend going back and reviewing old materials or starting with fresh new cards?
No, I'd start with fresh new cards, because if you go back to old materials, you're kind of introducing another variable, which is, if the child's not interested, well, is that an issue with the dynamics of the presentation of the cards, or is it just because they're old materials? And if we showed new materials, they would be into it. So, no, you should be showing new materials. Yeah, for a reset.
Okay, moving on. This is from Dominica. She has a 13-month-old daughter and started the reading, math, and Doman card programs when her baby was 4 months old.
Wow.
So, her first question: when and at what age should I start introducing Doman card facts that my baby has already seen, and how should I present them? Should I read the facts out loud or write them on the cards as sentences for her to read? Now, I believe Dominica uses our reading materials, but I don't believe she has. We have a whole program on this called the Gift of Knowledge course, where Spencer teaches exactly how to teach a Doman card curriculum, a world knowledge curriculum, to your child.
Yeah, and I have a couple of sets here, Noah. So here, for example, I have a set of flags of the world, right? So this is actually flags of Europe. And on the back of the cards, there are 3 facts to teach children, right? And so what we teach in the gift, it's called the Gift of Knowledge course, and it comes with, all of these materials, is first we provide, Noah, do you remember the number of cards that we provide?
It's 36 sets.
36 sets. Okay, got it. So yeah, we provide, which if my math is correct, I believe that's
180 cards.
180 cards. Okay.
Yeah.
So we teach in that course to go through the 180 cards, right? So you teach the set of European flags. You teach, these are great women from history. So you'd go through and just teach the names first, right? So you'd say, all right, this is the flag of Spain, and this is the flag of the United Kingdom. Here's the flag of France, and so on, right? And once you've taught all the names of the cards that you have, and usually that would take several months, then we come back. We come back later on and teach the facts. And the way we do this is we teach the facts in sets, right? So we take the first fact on each card and we teach it to the child, right? So for example, we'd say, this is the flag of Italy. The green represents the plains and hills, the white, the snowy Alps, and the red represents blood, right? So we'd read that first fact, and then we'd move on to the next set, the next card, right? And we'd say, this is the flag of the United Kingdom. It's often called the Union Jack, right? So you just read one fact on each card. That's a set of 5 facts, because there are 5 cards and 1 fact on each card. And we teach those facts 3 times a day for 3 days. Okay. So 3 times a day for 3 days means 9 repetitions that the child would hear those facts. So, but I would definitely recommend for Dominica getting the Gift of Knowledge course, because we go into a lot of depth, not just on how to teach the cards, but how to do problem solving, how to really kind of make it into a teaching curriculum.
Okay. Her second question: is there a specific or magic number of words a baby needs to see before they start reading independently?
It's a great question. And the answer is it depends on the child. I've seen certain children start to read independently even after a couple of 100 words. even as few sometimes as 200 or 300 words. But I would say that those children tend to be the kind of exception. In my experience, most children need to see between 500 and possibly up to 1,500 words before they start reading independently. And when I say reading independently, I mean they can pick up a book and read it, on their own. So it depends. Every child is different. It depends on many factors: their interest, the amount of distraction, the consistency of the program, and just personality. I mean, some children are just clued in completely when they're being shown materials, and other children are also interested in climbing up on the sofa and diving off and doing all the other fun things that kids like to do. So it depends on the child's personality too. So but somewhere between 500 and 1,500.
Okay, Dominica's third question: how quickly should I reduce the font size, and what size is appropriate for a 13-month-old?
No, sorry, can you read that one more time?
Yeah, sure. How quickly should I reduce the font size, and what size is appropriate for a 13-month-old? So this is a hard question to answer, because just from a technical standpoint, fonts can very much range in size. Okay, so this is a little advice. I've made all the materials for Doman Learning. I use Arial Black. Okay, that's the font I use. And I try not to go below 120 in font size. This is for single words. It changes for couplets and sentences, but that's a benchmark for people. If you want to find a different font, just use that as a benchmark. But also remember, the font does matter. There are fonts that are much more easily readable than others. But I just wanted to add that, just because I could throw out numbers for a font size, but it really, really depends on what font you choose.
Yeah, and we chose Arial on purpose because research has been done that shows, I believe, Arial and Times New Roman are kind of the two easiest fonts on the human eye. And so, yeah, that's what I would recommend. Now my answer, just as a broad answer about print size, would be, we're very selective with the print size, both for the reading before school materials and also for the Doman Books materials. If you sign up for the Doman Books course, which, by the way, any parent who's signed up for the bundle, all of the online courses at Doman Learning have access already to the Doman Books course. In the Doman Books course, there are 48 books, and each month the print size gets smaller and smaller for the books. So we do it very, very gradually, right? So we might start with like 90 font size, and the next month might be 80, and the next month after that 70. And for adults, we might barely even notice the difference, but for a young child with immature vision and developing reading skills, that can be a more substantial change. So like Noah said, for single words, probably around 120 is a good place to start. With homemade books, it's usually around 90 is where we begin. But if I were a parent, I would just get the Doman Books course, use those materials. And if you want to create at-home materials for your child personalized, that's great too. I would just mimic what you see in the Doman Books course.
Yeah, and I do think a really good indicator for font size can be content itself and the age level of the kid, right? Because the older the kid is, the more sentences you can put on the page, and the smaller the font has to be to fit those sentences, right? So if a baby is under a year old, Spencer, would you recommend more than a sentence on a page? Would you
generally maybe not? No. I generally, for a child under 1 year, I'd never do more than a sentence, and even a sentence I would keep short. I'd probably keep it to 3 to 4 words. And by the way, if you're keeping the font size large, it's almost impossible to put that much on a page. But Noah, as I was talking, one of the reasons why I smiled is that very often parents will come to me with, like, in a concerned way, like, I'm worried the print size is too small for my child, but I don't know. My first question is, does your child look at the text when you show the book or the single words? And they'll say, oh yeah, of course he looks. He's like very interested. Okay, then the print size is big enough. Because if a child was not able to see the text clearly, they wouldn't look at it. You understand what I mean? It's like if I showed you a 6 font size that you couldn't read, you wouldn't look at it with interest, if you're seeing blurry, right? So if the child's interested, the print size is big enough. Yeah. Children make it very obvious, by the way. I've had children where I'll show them a picture card and they look at it and you flash the word card and they look up like that. And that tells me immediately, the print size is too small.
This is Dominica's last question. Do you recommend using different font colors when teaching different languages?
Generally not. Not because there's anything bad about it. I just don't want to overcomplicate things. So there's nothing wrong with it. If you want to do red for English and blue for Russian, that's fine. There's nothing bad about it. It's not necessary.
Yeah. And don't do like yellow on a white,
It has to be
a white page.
It has to be a bold color. And I'm a little set in my ways. Red and black are the easiest colors to see and read. So I usually just stick to those.
For people joining, we are answering pre-submitted questions from our parents who are enrolled in our programs and courses. We will answer all public questions at the end. So this is from Allison. She is doing the reading program with her children. Her question is, once we finish reading a Doman book after 7 days, should I put it away or keep it out for my kids to look at whenever they want? Is it okay to pack the old books away so we can reuse the plastic page protectors for new ones? I feel like this is a very common, I know our nephew's and niece house has tons of homemade books that we've given them over the years.
So the answer for the first question, absolutely, you can, and I would say should leave books around. Because you want your child to grow up in an environment where there are books that they can grab. And many parents say that they just love watching their children pick up Doman books and look through them on their own. So the answer is as long as they respect the materials and they don't tear them apart and all of that. And then the answer to the second question is yes, you can also recycle materials. So if you want to pull a book out of the plastic sheets and put a new book in, of course, and many parents do that just for cost savings reasons.
Yeah. Okay, this is from Brianda. Her son is loving the Reading and Gift of Knowledge program. So this is not a question about that, but she just wanted to let us know. This is her question. We found the Code of Conduct so helpful that I decided to read Answering Autism, which is the book right behind Spencer, to see what other tips we could get from there. We started using a morning and bedtime routine checklist, and it has helped my husband and I be on the same page. But she saw in the book that kids need to fall asleep independently. Her first question is there a specific age at which a child should learn to fall asleep independently?
Great question. And I do have to say that this is an area where I have to say parents can be very sensitive around sleep philosophies. Some parents believe strongly in co-sleeping. And some parents believe strongly in teaching their children to be independent sleepers. And I'm not here to convert anyone, but she's absolutely right. In that book, we teach parents how to teach children to sleep independently. We feel that with children with neurodevelopmental issues and special needs, this is a very important ability because otherwise, sometimes they never develop the ability to sleep alone. Sorry, Noah, the original question was, what age?
Yeah, what age?
So some children, and so my wife is a pediatric sleep consultant. There are some children that as young as 4 months of age can sleep alone. Usually when a baby is born, we will always recommend, not that the child sleeps in the same bed as parents, but sleeps in the same room as parents. And then maybe at around 4 months of age, if parents are ready, they can start to teach a child to sleep independently. And by the way, just like giving a child almost any ability, children, when they learn things when they're younger, it's actually easier. It's easier to teach a 4-month-old to sleep independently than a 3-year-old. But yeah, I mean, it depends on parents' comfort and what they're ready for.
So her second question is, since my son currently feeds to sleep, is there any Doman recommendation or data on how long to continue breastfeeding a toddler?
Again, we don't have any definitive answer on that. I suspect that if I brought in the nutritionists that we work with, and also people like my own mom, who have a lot of experience, not just in the Doman method, but as a parent, she would probably recommend that you breastfeed as long as you can and you feel comfortable doing so. Yeah.
Okay, well, that is the end of our
Sorry, I will add, Noah, that there's a lot of research now that shows that breastfeeding is very good for brain development. And even though I don't really care about IQ, for example, there's research out there that shows that for cognitive development, breastfeeding can be very positive. Can be very good for gut bacteria. So there are a lot of benefits for breastfeeding in the first months or even years of life.
Got it. Well, with that, we can move to our public part of the Q&A where we take questions from parents on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Our first comment, I am putting it up right now. It is from Cloud Delafi, if I'm saying that right. So what is the best program for my son? He is 5 years old.
No, you take it away.
I mean, first off, if you want to speak with me and talk about what's best for your son, because I know answering a comment is, is very base level, and talking to you, we might be able to figure that out together. You can scan the QR code and schedule a meeting with me. Also, if you're on Instagram, the link is in our bio to schedule a call with me too. But I always say, start teaching what you are most enthusiastic about. Now, if your kid is closer to 5, I would say reading is pretty important and pretty up there. And I would probably say go with that first. But look, we say start with one program, and then about a month later, if you feel ready, to start another. So start with reading and then add math, and then a month later add world knowledge. Anything you want to add to that, Spencer?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. If a parent said, look, it's all equal to me, I just want to start with one thing, I would say reading, unless the child has shown they really are drawn to math, or maybe they've seen, the Doman cards in the past and they love those, and the parent says, okay, I want to do that. But otherwise, I say go with reading.
Yeah. Okay. This next question, I'm putting it up right now, is from Silver Food Lab. My son is 8. What do you offer for him?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Silver Food Lab, if you're still here and you're able to type, my first question for you is, do you see any kind of needs that your son has? Because if you say on the one hand, 8-year-olds can vary greatly, right? Some 8-year-olds read independently and they know their multiplication tables. And some 8-year-olds really struggle to read with fluency and with good comprehension, and have challenges with even simple addition, right? So 8-year-olds can vary greatly. And so what I would say is, if you feel your child could have stronger reading or math skills, your child could definitely be helped by the reading or math courses that we have at Doman Learning. If, on the other hand, if you're like, listen, my kid is flying and he can read independently and he can do, the multiplication tables, and I would say, okay, maybe the Doman courses don't have much to offer him at this point. But so it kind of depends on where your child is. Yeah. Feel free to add more info, Food Lab, and we can talk about it a bit more.
Okay, this is from Allison. I have been doing your reading program with my son, and I recently started the 3rd month. When I test him the way you say to, he sometimes gets the right answer and sometimes not. Should I be concerned or just keep going till the end of the program?
Okay. So, I think my first question, when you say sometimes he answers it and sometimes not, I'm going to presume that you're doing problem solving by holding up cards, right? You're holding up the word cat and the word dog, and you're saying, where's the word cat, right? So if you're doing problem solving in that way, my first question would be, what percentage of the time is he answering correctly? The reason why this is such an important question is, if you hold up two cards and you ask a child a question, like so here I've got the word tiger and I've got the word giraffe, right? And if I hold up these two cards and I say to a child, where's the word tiger? Well, if this is the first time I've ever done this activity, if the child points at tiger, well, I might know that, and even someone who's guessing, who can't read at all, has a 1 out of 2 chance to guess tiger correctly, right? But according to the rules of probability, if I ask a second question, right, if I say, okay, where's giraffe, and they get it correct, you only have a 1 in 4 chance of guessing 2 questions correctly in a row. And that keeps multiplying. So then it becomes 1 in 8 to get 3 questions, 1 in 16 to get 4 questions in a row. So the reason why I say that is I have a funny example of this, where once there was a mom and she reached out to me and she said, Spencer, I'm doing this. I'm very concerned my child isn't answering correctly all of the time. And I said, okay, I want you actually to mark down the percentage of accuracy. She got back to me and she said, he's 95% accurate. Right. So in her mind, that 5%, for a lot of adults, they kind of panic, because when a child doesn't get anything, when they don't get something correct, they kind of nullify in their mind all the correct answers the child has. And they say, well, he got one wrong. It means he doesn't understand anything. And that's not the way it works, right? 95% you'd pass in school, right? In fact, you pass with flying colors. So yeah, okay. So Allison has answered here. He answers correct about half the time. Okay. So that's very helpful for me, because it means it's not necessarily one of these cases where the vast majority of the time he's answering correctly. So Allison, a couple of thoughts, and you're probably doing all of this already. So first of all, I would always recommend to only ask questions with retired words. I'm going to presume that you're doing that, but it's very important that you go through the full number of repetitions before you ask questions. So that's only fair to him, right? He needs to see a category at least 15 times before showing them. And then my second question is, when you ask him, sorry, has Allison said the age of her son? Allison, can you put the age of your son? Is that
I don't see the age.
Yeah. I think, Allison, probably my next recommendation, similar to the advice I gave to another parent, is could you record a session and send it to Noah? Because with problem solving, sometimes if I watch it, it'll give me some idea. Even getting to see the child's face when they're asked a question can sometimes help me in kind of getting a sense of the child's confidence level. 3 years old. Yeah. So Allison, if you're comfortable with it, record a problem solving session and send it to Noah and let me watch it. Yeah, Noah and I can watch it together and give you some recommendations. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, for everyone joining, we are doing our public part of the Q&A. So if you have questions, if you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, drop them in the comments and we will get to them. Okay. This is from Yvette Diaz. My 2-year-old doesn't want to stay still when I show him the cards anymore. What can I do? He doesn't pay attention anymore. Before 2, I had all his attention.
Yeah. So my guess is that, I mentioned before that the principle of you always want to stop before your child wants to stop. And if I had to guess, Yvette, and by the way, I'm not blaming you, because children also change. A child sometimes is happy to see 3 categories in a sitting, and one day they just wake up and they're like, I'm not willing to do this anymore, right? And they're human beings. They change just like we change. So my guess is whatever he was okay with at a certain point, he just no longer was okay with that. So a couple of general points for a parent in this situation. First of all, I'd say, I just always confirm, are you adding new materials? Because if you're kind of recycling old materials, that alone could be the problem. The second thing that I would say is, have you added Doman books yet, right? Because in the reading before school course, we start with single words and we build all the way up to the Doman books. And I would say about 80% of the time when a parent contacts me and they say, oh, my child's kind of bored with the reading program, I'll say, you know what? Just start Doman books and let me know how things go. And about 80% of the time they contact me 2 weeks later and they go, he loves the books. Everything's fine now, and it's like, okay, good. So sometimes children actually hit a point where if you're showing them words, even if you're doing the new Doman learning materials with pictures and words, right? There are some children that just hit this point where they're like, all right, we've been seeing words for like a year now. What's next? That's a natural human thing. We want to grow, right? Some kids even think, oh, this is a baby thing because we've been doing it for a year, But when you pull out the books, they're like, yep, that's a big kid thing. Okay. So it is funny the thoughts that even tiny kids will have. So I would say, yeah, Edith, make sure to watch the Doman books. If you've already signed up for the reading before school course, I would rewatch it because your child's older now. You're kind of watching it for a new child. And start the Doman books.
Okay, for people who are joining, this is our public section of the Q&A. So if you have any questions for Spencer and I, drop them in the comments and we'll get to them. Our next question is from XPretix. Hi, how long before you start seeing progress when you start showing words with a child who is 20 months old?
Well, it depends what you consider to be seeing progress, right? Because for me, progress would be a child enjoying the cards, right? Even a child being excited and willing to learn information is progress in and of itself. So that's my quick answer to your question. Now, if you're saying how quickly can I start to see results where my child is demonstrating to me that they're able to recognize cards, it depends on the child. Some children will willingly show things, right? They'll kind of show parents in their own ways. They know that word, they know that Doman card, etc. But some children, this goes back to Allison's point, we need to incorporate something called problem solving, where we're asking the children questions. And I want to go back for a second because Allison asked a bit about this. Whenever we ask a child a question, right? First of all, we never ask them to say it aloud. We never say to a child, what's this? And expect them to say tiger, because many children are very self-conscious, to answer things aloud. It's kind of like if I said to all of you right now, I'll give you a written exam on what I've talked about today. You might go, okay, fine. I don't want to, but I'll do it. But if I said, okay, I'm going to bring you up in front of the group and I'm going to ask you questions and you have to answer it in public, you would probably be like, no. You'd probably pay me $10,000 to not have to do that, right? So kids are the same. They don't like to be put on the spot, right, publicly. So when you ask a child a question, right, you always do it with choices. And for example, you would say, if I've already taught this set for 5 days, I could say to the child, okay, where is the tiger? Now, the most important thing in the session, the parent often thinks the most important thing is my child gets it correct. That's not true. The most important thing about the session is how do you react to your child's answer, right? So if the child points, if I say, where's the giraffe? And the child points at the giraffe, I'm going to say, yep, that's the giraffe. And this is the tiger. Okay. So now if they answer incorrectly, right, if they pointed at this card, I would just say, that's the tiger. And here's the giraffe. Okay. So you can see that my response is almost the same, right? And what are we doing in this? We're turning this problem solving session into a teaching session. So we're saying to the child, actually, it doesn't matter so much if you're right or wrong. What really matters here is we learn, right? And you're also teaching a child that making mistakes is okay. Like humans are going to make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. That's the whole point of it, right? So always make sure to give your child feedback, turn it into a teaching session, stay kind of emotionally, you're going to be cheerful, but kind of neutral. And that's the best way to do it. I much prefer that, by the way. Sometimes parents the child answers correctly and I'll see a parent go, yeah, that's the tiger. You're the smartest kid ever. Well, and I'll even say, you don't even have to get that excited, because that means when the child answers wrong the next time and you go, oh, that's the giraffe. It really, the child, kids are smart and they'll know intuitively, oh, I disappointed mom or dad, so better to stay cheerful and just teach them, hey, this is a learning process.
Mm-hmm. And this is going back to Allison. She has a question about problem solving. Is it okay to bribe kids to problem solve? My kids always ask if they can have cherries. They love doing the reading program without a bribe, but they always ask for a treat for the problem solving.
Yeah, I never recommend bribery or blackmail ever. Now, I do want to say one thing. I want to define the difference between bribery and rewards. They're two different things. And some people don't understand the difference. So the difference between a reward and bribery is, who does the power reside with, right? So for example, if you say to a child, hey, I want to let you know, if you take out the garbage each day, you get this. That's a reward, right? Because you're stating, if this is done, this happens. And I ultimately decide if that happens, right? If on the other hand, if you go, please, 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 please take out the garbage and mommy will give you, this thing, right? It's still the same actions, but now you're putting the power, they're deciding, is the bribe worth it for them to do, if that makes sense. So I'm a little particular about the word bribe for that reason. So now in terms of rewards, to Allison, to answer your question, I would not give a reward for a correct answer, because again, I don't want to stigmatize to a child answering incorrectly. I would give rewards, for example, for hard work. Like if a child worked hard at something and I said, hey, you worked really hard at that, here's a reward, because you want to reward and recognize hard work. But yeah, I wouldn't do it for correct and incorrect answers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me make sure I'm not skipping anyone. Okay, this is our next question. I'm putting it up on the screen. 1 second. Okay, this is from Maternidad del Gloriosa. What do you think of mixed teaching the reading program with phonics method? The child is 27 months old.
This is Maternidad. This is a question I probably would have given you a little bit of a different answer even a year ago. A year ago, I would have said, don't do phonics. I've changed my tune a little bit because a lot of research shows that actually children that get a sight word method like the Doman method, and the Doman, I know I'm very biased, but the Doman method is by far the best sight word method. There are a lot of sight word methods that don't even remotely get the same kind of results. But there's research that shows that children that learn reading both with sight words and phonics actually do great and do much better than kids that only learn phonics, for example. So I've kind of changed my tune and I say it's fine. The other reason is I've seen many children, come to us who have failed to learn with phonics. Okay. Now, maybe the phonics have helped them do certain things. Maybe they recognize letters, maybe they know some of the sounds that letters make, but they don't read fluently. And when we do the Doman method, they start reading fluently. So what I'm trying to get at here is the two things can be complementary, right? It's not like if you do phonics and you do the Doman method side by side, that your child will become confused and they'll be like, cannot compute, and they'll shut down. Like, that's not going to happen. Your kid will be fine. I would always say to parents, my advice based on my experience is to major with the Doman method and minor in phonics, but the two things can absolutely be done together. Yeah. No problem.
Okay. Well, we are almost at time. Let's see. If you have a question, this is now your time to post it in the comments below. Since we are coming to the end of our Q&A, I'll give people another second. But before that, I just want to say that, by the way, can you hear me all right, Spencer?
Yeah, you broke up slightly for a couple seconds, but we heard everything.
Okay, so if you are wondering where to start, what should you teach your child first? You're interested in learning about the Doman method. Please schedule a discovery call with me. I love talking to parents, and you can do so by scanning the QR code in the corner, or if you're on Instagram, you can go to the link in our bio and schedule a discovery call with me. And we'll talk and see what's best for your child. It's the best part of my job. I love talking to you guys, so please do so. Spencer, do you have anything else?
No, if you're going to sign up for any of the courses at domanlearning.com, you can just use the coupon code Spencer10 and you'll get 10% off anything at checkout.
Great. And we are going to go to our last question of the Q&A. This is from Noelle Saltzman. I did the Doman technique with my daughter and she is 7 years old now. Is there any recommendations on how to teach her to spell?
Well, I'm going to presume, Noelle, that your child reads independently, because if she doesn't read independently, my advice would be different. I would say focus on reading, because the better a child reads, the better they can learn to spell. Because I wasn't ready for this question, unfortunately, I don't have certain resources that I could pull up for you. But to give you a quick answer, what I would recommend doing is I would pull out some of those past single words that you showed in the Doman method, okay? And I would buy your child letter tiles. So when I say letter tiles, think like Scrabble letters. They could be wooden tiles, or they could be magnetic letter tiles. You can get these on Amazon for $10. And I would begin by taking a word like tiger, and you give the child the 5 letters in that word. Do not give your child all 26 letters of the alphabet and expect them to spell the word, right? Give them the 5 letters of tiger, but mixed up. And you just start by having them put the letters underneath. So for example, they'd put the letter T, then I, then G, E, and R underneath, right? And that's called copying, where they're copying with the letter tiles. And then after I've had the child do that a couple of times, I'd say, okay, you've copied the word tiger a bunch of times. Let's flip it over and cover the word if it's on the back. And you say, okay, now you spell tiger on your own. And the child puts the letters in order without any kind of help, right? And once they've put the 5 letters in order, you flip the card around and you say, okay, check your work. This is the important part. You don't say, oh no, you put the R before the E, you're wrong, right? You say, all right, check your work. So the child looks and they correct their mistakes. That way they learn from their mistakes, number one. And then number two, when we correct our own mistakes, we're happy. When someone else corrects us, we hate it, right? So little kids, when they correct their own mistakes, they're like, oh, that's right. It's ER, not RE. But if you tell them, they go, mommy's upset or something, So start with copying with letter tiles with the single words, and then move to independent spelling. And there's a lot more that I could say, Noelle. So feel free to send Noah more questions or join future sessions, but start with that. And that alone, especially if you do it with repetition every day, you'll start to see your child's spelling improve.
By the way, Noelle did say her child's been reading since 17 months old. So
oh wow,
reads very well.
Wow, yeah. So Noah, there's also, remember you sent the code of conduct video to a parent. There is also a video link in those links for how to teach your child to write or type. Okay. And if you reach out to Noah could send you that video.
Yeah, here, I'll put up, you can email at hello@domanlearning.com, DM us on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. I will answer all of those places. And look, I feel so lucky that we get so many questions. I know there are questions that we couldn't get to and our hour is up. So please reach out to me and I will answer you in the meantime. As always, we'll see you next month at our next Q&A.
No, I just want to say one last thing. I just think it's incredibly unique. I just realized myself. You said, Noelle's said her child's been reading since he was 17 months. And I went, oh, okay. And then I realized, oh, wait, that's not, to an outsider, that looks insane. But yeah, congratulations, Noelle. That's exceptional. And it just shows the kind of conversations we get to have here.
No, 100%. Well, everyone, have a great rest of your July, even though there's 2 more days, and we will see you in August.
Bye bye.